Number 1. The line graph shows the percent of cars for sale at a used car lot on a given day by model year. For what model year is the percent of cars for sale the smallest? So this y-axis gives us the percent of cars for sale based on the given model year. And we're going to look for the lowest point in terms of this y-axis. As you can see, it's this point right there, and the value is going to be 4%. So the year that has that lowest sale percentage is 2014. Number 2, for a particular machine that produces beads, 29 out of every 100 beads it produces has a defect. A bead produced by the machine will be selected at random. What is the probability of selecting a bead that has a defect? So we know that out of every 100 beads, 29 of them have defects. So the probability of selecting a bead that has a defect would be 29 out of 100, which would be C. Number 3. In the figure, line M is parallel to line N and T intersects both lines. What is the value of X? Whenever we're dealing with two parallel lines and one line intersecting, there's two different angles that are created from this. We can see 33. So all the angles that I'm outlining, all the smaller angles are 33. And then all of the larger angles that I'm outlining in red is the other value, which would be X. The way that we figure out what the red angles are is by subtracting 33 from 180. And that's going to give us 147 degrees, which would be D. Number 4. What is the y-intercept of the graph shown? The y-intercept is wherever the line crosses the y-axis, which is the vertical line. We can see that our graph crosses the y-axis right here at 8. So that means that the y-intercept has to be 8, which will be D. Number 5. The total cost f of x in dollars to lease a car for 36 months from a particular car dealership is given by f of x equals 36 times x plus 1,000, where x is the monthly payment in dollars. What is the total cost to lease a car when the monthly payment is $400? So by giving us 400 as a monthly payment, what they're telling us is that x equals 400, and we need to plug that into the equation. So it's going to be 36 times 400 plus 1,000. 36 times 400 is 14,400 plus 1,000 gives us 15,400, which will be C. Number 6. Each side of a square has a length of 45. What is the perimeter of the square? The perimeter is going to be 4 times the length of one of the sides. Since we're dealing with a square, all the lengths are the same, which is 45. So we're going to multiply 4 by 45, and that gives us 180, which will be the perimeter, 180. Number 7. What is the positive solution to the given equation? We have 55 divided by x plus 6 equals x. The first step is to multiply by x plus 6 on both sides. That will give us 55 equals x times x plus 6. We can distribute the x. 55 equals x squared plus 6x, and then we're going to subtract 55 on each side. So we're going to get 0 equals x squared plus 6x minus 55. Next, we need to factor the quadratic. We're going to write x first for both of them. Since the first sign is a plus, we're going to drop the first sign. And then you ask yourself, a positive times what gives us a negative? So a positive times a negative is negative. Then we're going to find factors of 55 that subtract to make 6. That's going to be 11 and 5. The bigger number always goes first, 11 and 5. And then this is going to result into x equals negative 11 and x equals 5. The question is asking for the positive solution, so that's going to be x equals 5. Number 8, an object travels at a constant speed of 12 centimeters per second. At this speed, what is the time in seconds that it would take for the object to travel 108 centimeters? So first I'm going to give you an example. Let's say we're going to travel 100 miles and we're traveling 50 miles per hour. If we're going 50 miles per hour and we want to go 100 miles, it's obvious that this would take 2 hours to travel that distance. The way that we figure that out is by dividing 100 by 50 to get the 2 hours. So we're going to divide the length by the miles per hour, or the rate, in this case centimeters per second. So we're going to do 108 centimeters divided by 12 centimeters per second. And this will give us a total of 9 seconds. Number 9. The lists give the values in data sets x and y. Which statement correctly compares the mean of data set x and the mean of data set y? So if we compare the two data sets, you can see that y has the exact same data set as x, except they add 27 at the end. What this does to the mean is it makes it a little bit higher, or it gives you a larger mean. So if we look at the answer choices, the data set x is greater than the mean of data set y. That's not true. We know y is greater than x. The mean of data set x is less than the mean of data set y. That is true. The mean of data set x and data set y are equal. That's not true. There's not enough information to compare the means. So it'll be B. Number 10. A rocket contained 467,000 kilograms of propellant before launch. Exactly 21 seconds after launch, 362,105 kilograms of the propellant remained. On average, approximately how much propellant in kilograms did the rocket burn each second after launch? So what we need to do is find out how much propellant was used and then divide that by the number of seconds that had elapsed. That's going to be the 467,000 minus 362,105, and then we're going to divide that by 21. So 467,000 minus 362,105, that's going to give us 104,895, and we're going to divide that by 21. And that's going to give us a total of 4,995 kilograms per second. Number 11. If 4x plus 2 equals 12, what is the value of 16x plus 8? What we have to do first is get x by itself. We're going to subtract 2 on both sides to get 4x equals 10. And then we're going to divide each side by 4 to give us x equals 5 over 2. Then we're going to plug this in for x in this expression. 16 times 5 over 2 plus 8. 16 times 5 over 2, first we divide 16 by 2, that's 8. And then we multiply that by 5, which is 40. And then we're going to have 40 plus 8, which gives us 48. Number 12. An object is kicked from a platform. The equation h equals negative 4.9t squared plus 7t plus 9 represents the situation where h is the height of the object above the ground in meters, t seconds after it is kicked. Which number represents the height in meters from which the object is kicked? So the height of the object is going to be the value we get when t is equal to 0. So if we plug t for 0, we'll get 4.9 times 0 squared plus 7 times 0 plus 9. 9.4 times 0 is 0. 7 times 0 is 0 plus 9 is going to give us 9, which is D. Number 13. The given equation defines the function f for what value of x is f of x. Does f of x reach its minimum? The way that we find this is we have to use the equation for the vertex of this function, which will be negative b over 2 times a. The coefficient for x squared is a, the coefficient for x is b, and the number that has no variable is c. So we're going to give us negative, and then b is negative 50 over 2 times a, which is 4. Negative 50 is 50 over 2 times 4 is 8. And then we can simplify both of them by dividing by 2 to give us 25 over 4. Number 14. A small business owner budgets $2,200 to purchase candles. The owner must purchase a minimum of 200 candles to maintain a discounted price. If the owner pays $4.90 per candle to purchase small candles and $11.60 per candle to purchase large candles, what is the maximum number of large candles the owner must purchase to stay within the budget and maintain the discounted price? So we're going to come up with two equations here, and we're going to use system of equations to figure out what the answer is. First, the number of small candles plus the number of large candles has to equal 200. And then the cost of the small candle times the number of small candles plus the price of the large candles times the number of large candles must equal 2,200. So first we're going to get x by itself for the equation on top. We do that by subtracting y. And that's going to give us x equals negative y plus 200. Then we're going to plug this in for x in the other equation. This will give us 4.9 times negative y plus 200 plus 11.6y equals 2,200. We're going to distribute 4.9. This would be negative 4.9y. And then 4.9 times 200 is going to be plus 980 plus 11.6y equals 2,200. Then we're going to combine like terms. 11.6 minus 4.9 is going to be 6.7y, and that's going to be equal to 2,200 minus 980, which is 1,220. And then we're going to divide by 6.7 on each side to give us y equals 182. So since this gives us a decimal, we need to buy a total of 183 large candles. Number 15. In the linear function f of 0 equals 8 and f of 1 equals 12, which equation defines f? The first thing to point out is they give us the y-intercept. When they say f of 0 equals 8, they're telling us that the y-intercept is 8. So when we look at the answer choices and we follow the equation y equals mx plus b, where b is our y-intercept, we can eliminate answers C and B because A and D both have a y-intercept of 8. The next step is to figure out what the slope is. We're going to use the 2 points 0, 8 and 1, 12 to figure out what the slope is. We're going to plug these into the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This will give us 12 minus 8 over 1 minus 0, which gives us 4 over 1 or 4. So the slope of our equation has to be 4, and that will be D. Number 16. The function f of w equals 6w squared gives the area of a rectangle in square feet. If the width is w feet and its length is 6 times its width, which of the following is the best interpretation of f of 14 equals 1176? So we know that the number inside the parentheses has to be our width. So our width is equal to 14. And whatever this equals to, f of w, is going to give us the area of the rectangle. So 1176 must be equal to the area of the rectangle. A says if the width of the rectangle is 14, then the area of the rectangle is 1176. And that's the answer. (17) The circle shown has center 0, circumference 144 pi, and diameters PR and QS. The length of arc PS is twice the length of arc PQ. What is the length of arc Number 17. The circle shown has center 0, circumference 144 pi, and diameter PR and QS. The length of arc PS is twice the length of arc PQ. What is the length of arc QR? So if we look at the circle, we can see that PS is the same length as QR. So whatever the PS circumference is, or arc length, is going to be the same as QR. They said that PR or PS is twice the length as PQ. So if we call P to Q X, P to S will be 2X. SR is the same as PQ, which would just be X. And then RQ is 2X. So if we add up each of these values, 2x plus x plus 2x plus x, that's going to equal 144 pi. If we add all these x's together, we'll get 6x equals 144 pi. And if we divide each side by 6, we'll get x equals 24 pi. Remember that they're not asking for x, they're asking for QR, which we noted as 2 times x. So if x is 24 pi, 2x will be 48 pi. Number 18. A company that provides whale watching tours takes groups. A company that provides whale watching tours takes groups of 21 people at a time. The company's revenue is $80 per adult and $60 per child. If the company's revenue for one group consisting of adults and children is $1,440, how many people in the group were children? So same thing here, we're going to come up with two different equations and solve it using substitution. First, to figure out the number of people, we know that the number of adults plus the number of children has to equal 21. And then the cost per adult times the number of adults plus the cost per child times the number of children is going to equal 1,440. The first step is to get x by itself for the equation on top. We do that by subtracting y. We're going to get x equals negative y plus 21. And then we're going to plug this in for x in the other equation. This is going to be 80 times negative y plus 21 plus 60y equals 1,440. Next, we're going to distribute the 80. That's going to be negative 80y plus 80 times 21. 80 times 21 is 1,701. No. 80 times 21 is 1680 plus 60y equals 1440. We can combine like terms. Negative 80 plus 60y is going to be negative 20y. And then we can subtract 1680 on both sides to get negative 240. The last step to get y by itself is to divide each side by negative 20. And we get y equals 240 divided by 20 will be 12. So that means there's a total of 12 children in this tour if the total revenue was 1,440. Number 19. The function h is defined by h of x equals 4x plus 28. The graph of y equals h of x in the xy plane has an x-intercept at a, 0 and a y-intercept at 0, b, where a and b are constants. What is the value of a plus b? So what we have to do is find the x-intercept, y-intercept, and then add them together. The y-intercept is easy. It's given to us in the equation because it's in y equals mx plus b format. So the y-intercept is 28. And then to find the x-intercept, we're going to set the equation equal to 0. To get x by itself, first we're going to subtract 28 on both sides. 4x equals negative 28. And then we're going to divide by 4 to get x equals negative 7. So we have 28 and negative 7. If we add them together, 28 plus negative 7, that's going to give us 21. 20. One of the factors of 2x cubed plus 42x squared plus 208x is x plus b, where b is a positive constant. What is the smallest possible value of b? So first we need to find out what are the factors of this expression. They all have a 2x in common, so we can factor that out. We'll be left with x squared plus 21x plus 104. So we have 2x, and then we're going to factor the quadratic. We're going to have a plus for both of them. And then now we need to think of factors of 104 that add to make 21. So factors of 104, 104 divided by 4, that's not it. 104 divided by 8, yeah. So 13 times 8 is 104, and when you add them together you get 21. The bigger number always goes first. So it's saying that one of the factors is x plus b, where b is a positive constant. What is the smallest possible value of b? And that's going to be 8. (21) In the given system of equations, a is a positive constant. The system has exactly one distinct real solution. What is the value of a? So what we have to do is set these two equations equal to each other. So x squared plus 8x plus a equals negative 1.5. Then we're going to add 1.5 over to the left. X squared plus 8x plus a plus 1.5. And then we're going to use the equation for the discriminant to figure out what the value of a needs to be in order for there to be exactly one solution. The discriminant formula is b squared minus 4 times a times c. And in order for there to be one distinct real solution, this has to be equal to 0. B squared is 8 squared, 64, minus 4 times 1 times a plus 1.5. And this has to be equal to 0. So this is going to be 64 minus, and then we're going to distribute the 4. So minus 4a minus 6 equals 0. We can combine like terms. 64 minus 6 is going to be 58 minus 4a equals 0. We can subtract 58 on both sides to get negative 4a equals negative 58. And if we divide both sides by negative 4, we're going to get a has to be 14.5. Number 22. The function f is given. Which table of values represents y equals f of x minus 3? So if we subtract 3 from whatever the given numbers are, that's going to tell us what the answer is. So first we need to figure out what we get when we plug in negative 6. So f of negative 6, if we plug in negative 6 to this first one, we're going to get 0. And if we subtract 3 from 0, that will give us negative 3. So that ordered pair should be negative 6 and negative 3 for the xy table. So we know it can't be A, might be B, might be C, can't be D. So next we're going to do the same thing with negative 5. If we plug in negative 5 in right here, that's also going to give us 0. It's going to be something times 0 times something, which gives us 0. So we know that f of negative 5 equals 0, and then when we subtract 3 from that, that's going to give us negative 3. So we also know that for the x value of negative 5, the y value has to be negative 3. And the only one that matches that is B. Number 23. For the function q, the value of qx decreases by 45% for each increase in the value of x by 1. If q of 0 equals 14, which equation defines Q? So we know that the value of Q of X decreases by 45% for every increase in the value of X by 1. So that means that we're going to have 100% minus 45%, which gives us 55%. And if we turn that into a decimal, that's going to be 0.55. The format of this question is going to be whatever the initial amount is times our rate to the power of x. When q is 0, when x is 0, q of x is 14. So that's going to be our initial amount, or the p. So it's going to be 14 times the rate, which will be 0.55 raised to the power of x, or c. Number 24. The graph of y equals f of x plus 14 is shown. Which equation defines function f? We know that we're looking for f of x. So if we were to get f of x by itself in this equation, it would be f of x equals y minus 14. We're going to find the equation of the line shown above and then subtract 14 from it to find out what f of x is. The y-intercept is positive 2, so it's going to be y equals something times x plus 2. And then we need to see our slope. We have a point right here, y-intercept of 2, and an x-intercept of 8. That gives us a slope of negative 1 over 4. So in order to find f of x, all we have to do is subtract 14 from this value, and then we will get f of x equals negative 1 over 4x minus 12, which gives us A. Number 25. The side lengths of right triangle RST are given. Triangle RST is similar to triangle UVW, where S corresponds to V and T corresponds to W. What is the value of tangent of W? So first we're going to draw this triangle. This will be R, this will be S, and this will be T. We know that this is 20. S to T is 48. And then T to R is 52. This is not drawn to scale. And we know that UVW corresponds to RST. So this will also be U, this will also be V, and this will also be W. So they're asking for tangent of W. If we write out SOHCAHTOA, we know that tangent of W will be opposite over adjacent. The opposite side is 20 and the adjacent side is 52. So we will get 20 over 52. And we can simplify them by dividing by 4 to get 5 over 13. Number 26. 1 gallon of paint will cover 220 square feet of surface. A room has a total wall area of W square feet. Which equation represents the total amount of paint, P in gallons, needed to paint the wall of the room twice? So we know that 1 gallon of paint covers 220 square feet of surface. So whatever the total surface area is, we're going to divide that by the number of square feet 1 gallon covers, which is 220. But the question says needed to paint walls of the room twice. So instead of W, it's going to be 2 times W. We can simplify this fraction by dividing the top and bottom by 2, which would give us W over 220 divided by 2 is 110. And this would be the expression that represents how much paint is needed. Number 27. The number A is 110% greater than number B. So 1.1, 110% times times B is going to equal A, because A is greater than B. The number B is 90% less than the number 47. So 90% less is going to be 0.1 times 47. And then it's asking what is the number A. So the first thing that we have to do is multiply 0.1 times 47. That gives us 4.7. And then we're going to plug that in for B in the other equation. 1.1 times 4.7 equals A. 1.1 times 4.7 is 5.17. So that is the number that A is equal to. So this is the 28th question that we're going over, but since it's a new section of the test, it's going to reset as number 1. There are 55 students in Spanish Club. A sample of Spanish Club students were selected at random and asked whether they intend to enroll in a new study program. Of those surveyed, 22% responded that they intend to enroll in the study program. Based on this survey, which of the following is the best estimate of the number of Spanish Club students who intend to enroll in the study program? Well, we know that there are 55 students in the Spanish Club who were surveyed, and they said that 22% responded that they intend to enroll in the study program. And the question is asking, what is the total number of Spanish Club students who intend to enroll in the study program? So since 20% responded that they would, we're going to multiply the total number of students by 20%, which is 0.2. And when we multiply these two numbers together, we get 11 students. Number 2, Jay walks at a speed of 3 miles per hour and runs at a speed of 5 miles per hour. He walks for W hours and runs for R hours, for a combined total of 14 miles. Which equation represents this situation? So whenever you have a rate, miles per hour, and you have the number of hours, you multiply them together to get the total distance traveled. So he walks 3 miles per hour times the number of hours he walks plus 5 miles per hour times the number of hours he runs, and that's going to equal the total number of miles. So 3W plus 5R equals 14. The scatter plot shows the relationship between two variables x and y. The line of best fit is shown. There's two things to consider here. The slope, whether the slope is positive or negative, and whether the y-intercept is positive or negative. So first, the slope. From left to right, the graph is increasing. The graph is going up. So that means that our slope is going to be positive, and our y-intercept is right here, right below 3. So that means that it is also positive. Y-intercept is also positive. So we have to look for the answer choice that has a positive y-intercept and a positive slope. And as you can see, that is answer choice A. B has a negative slope, C has a negative y-intercept, D has both negative. So A is the only answer. Number 4. The graph of y equals f of x is shown in the xy plane. What is the value of f of 0? F of 0 means what is the y value when x equals 0, or what is the y-intercept. And if we look at the graph, the line crosses the y-axis right here at 3. So that means when x is 0, y is equal to 3. Number 6. What is the median of the data shown? The first thing we have to do is write the numbers in order. Conveniently, they are already in order. And what we're going to do is cross out one from each end at a time. So we cross out the first ones on each end, second ones on each end, and we're going to keep on doing this till we get the number in the middle, which is 79. Number 7. What value of x is shown, what value of x is the solution to the given equation? All we have to do to get x by itself is subtract 40 on each side. So minus 40, and we get x equals 55. So we'll do number 5 and then number 8. Which expression is equivalent to m to the 4th, q to the 4th, z to the negative 1 times m, q to the 5th, z to the 3rd? So what we have to do is multiply the variables that are the same with each other. When we do that, we're going to add the exponents. This m that has no exponent is really m to the 1 power. So if we multiply m to the 4th times m to the 1st, that's going to give us m to the 5th. Q to the 4th times q to the 5th is q to the 9th. Z to the power of negative 1 times z to the 3rd is z to the 2nd. And if we look for which answer this looks like, that is B. Number 8. The solution to the given system of equations is xy. What is the value of x plus y? The first step is we're going to use the equation on top to figure out what x is. 5x equals 15. To get x by itself, we're going to divide each side by 5. This will give us x equals 3. Next, we're going to plug this into x in the other equation. That's going to be negative 4 times 3 plus y equals negative 2. Negative 4 times 3 is 12, negative 12, plus y equals negative 2, and then we're going to add 12 to both sides to get y equals 10. So we have x equals 3, y equals 10, and if we were to add these two solutions together, 3 plus 10 is 13. Number 9. The given function g models the number of gallons of gasoline that remains from a full tank in a car after driving m miles. According to the model, about how many gallons of gas are used to drive each mile. So when they ask how many gallons of gas are used to drive each mile, in essence they're asking for what is the slope. They're asking how much does the amount of gas decrease for each mile used, which is another way of asking for the slope of this equation, which ends up just being 0.05. The reason why it's negative is because the amount of gas in the car decreases after each mile. And our answer is represented by positive 0.05 because of the way the question is phrased. How many gallons are used to drive each mile? 0.05. Number 10. The given equation relates the positive numbers b, x, and y. Which equation correctly expresses x in terms of b and y? So our objective here is to try to get x by itself. The first step is to multiply by y on each side. This will give us y over 7b equals 11x. And then we're going to divide each side by 11. This will give us y over 77b is equal to x. And if we look at our answer choices, that will be C. Number 11. The graphs of the given equations in the xy plane intersect at the point x, y. What is a possible value of x? Since we have y equals 76 and y equals x squared minus 5, we're going to set those two equal to each other. X squared minus 5 equals y, and y is also equal to 76. So we can substitute or remove that y in the middle and simply set x squared minus 5 equal to 76. To get x by itself, first we're going to add 5 to both sides. To get x squared equals 81. And then we're going to take the square root of both sides. On the left we'll have x. On the right, the square root of 81 gives us plus or minus 9. So either positive 9 or negative 9. And if we look at the answer choices, we can see that B is the only one that has either negative 9 or positive 9. Number 12. The point x, 53 is a solution to the system of inequalities in the xy plane. Which of the following could be the value of x? What we're going to do is plug in 53 for y in the equation in the bottom. That will give us 4x plus 53 is less than 18. And now we're going to solve for x and see which one of these values makes the statement true. First, we need to subtract 53 on each side. That will give us 4x is less than 18 minus 53 is negative 35. And then we're going to divide each side by 4. This will give us x is less than negative 8.75. So the only value from these answer choices where x is less than negative 8.75 is A. Out of 300 seeds that were planted, 80% sprouted. How many of these seeds sprouted? What we need to find for number 13 is what is 80% of 300. The way we find that is by multiplying 300 by 80%. We need to turn 80% into a decimal, which becomes 0.8. And 300 times 0.8 is 240. So 240 seeds sprouted out of the 300. 14. The function f is defined by f of x equals 4x. For what value of x does f of x equal 8? So we know that f of x equals 4x. So 4x equals f of x. And they want to know for what value of x does f of x equal 8. So similar to what we did in one of the previous questions. We're going to take away the f of x in the middle and simply set 4x equal to 8. To get x by itself, you divide each side by 4, and we get x equals 2. Which expression is equivalent to 8x times x minus 7 minus 3 times x minus 7 over 2x minus 14? On top, the first term and the second term both have an x minus 7. They both have an x minus 7. So what we're going to do is factor out x minus 7. And then we're going to have 8x minus 3 left over. All over. On the bottom, we can factor out a 2. And we would have x minus 7 left over. For the top and the bottom, we can cancel out the x minus 7's. And we will be left with 8x minus 3 over 2, which is B. Number 16. Line P is defined by 2y plus 18x equals 9. Line R is perpendicular to the line P in the xy plane. What is the slope of the line R? We know that R and P are parallel. What we need to do first is figure out what is the slope of line P. We're going to do that by getting y by itself. Right now we have 2y plus 18x equals 9. First we're going to subtract 18x on each side to give us 2y equals negative 18x plus 9. And then we're going to divide everything by 2. This will give us y equals negative 9x plus 4.5. So the slope for line P is negative 9, and the slope perpendicular to that, first we have to change the sign in front, so instead of a negative it's going to be positive, and we have to find the reciprocal of 9, which would be 1 over 9, or C. The given function f models the number of coupons a company sent to their customers at the end of each year, where t represents the number of years since the end of 1998, and 0 is less than or equal to t is less than or equal to 5. If y equals f of t is graphed in the ty plane, which of the following is the best interpretation of the y-intercept of the graph in the context? Whenever we're dealing with the y-intercept, what that means is the other variable, in this case t, is equal to 0. So if we plug 0 in for t, we will have 8,000 times 0.65 to the power of 0. 0.65 to the power of 0 is 1. And 8,000 times 1 is 8,000. So we know that the function will give us a value of 8,000 if we plug in t equals 0. And what this means is that this represents the number of coupons a company sent to their customers in the year that they refer to. So number of years since the end of 1998, this will be 0 years after the end of 1998. So if we go through our answer choices, A says the minimum estimated number of coupons the company sent to their customers during the 5 years. So we know that it's not 5 years, this is year 0, and we got 8,000. So that can't be right. B, if we skip to the end, it says during the 5 years was 8,000. We know that's not true. That was in the first year. C tells us that at the end of 1998, the total amount was 1428, which we know is wrong. And D, the last one, says at the end of 1998, the number of coupons that they sent to their customers was 8,000. And that is what we're looking for. (18) Triangle XYZ is similar to triangle RST, such that X, Y, and Z correspond to R, S, and T respectively. The measure of angle Z is 20 degrees, and 2 times XY equals RS. What is the value of T? Since the two triangles are similar, that means that the corresponding angles will all be the same to the other triangle. We know that Z corresponds to T, which means that the angle measures would be the same. So if the angle measure of Z is 20 degrees and Z and T correspond, that means the measure of angle T would also be 20 degrees. Just a note that this information that they added here, 2xy equals rs, is used to try to trick you to thinking that you have to do more than you actually have to. Number 19. One of the equations in the system of two linear equations is given. The system has no solution. Which equation could be the second equation in the system? If the system has no solutions, that means two things. One, the two equations have the same slope. And two, that they have different y-intercepts. So we want to look for which one of these equations would have the same slope but different y-intercepts. If we look at C and D, to get y by itself, we would have to add 12x to the other side, which means that they do not have the same slope. A and B, if we add 6x to both sides, we would end up with the same slope. But if we look at A, the y-intercept would be 18, and we need a different y-intercept. So it can't be A, and the answer is B. Number 20. What is the area in square centimeters of a rectangle with a length of 34 centimeters and a width of 29 centimeters? In order to find the area of the rectangle, we need to multiply the length by the width, which means we're going to multiply 34 by 29. 34 times 29 gives us 986 centimeters squared. (21) The solution of the given system of equations is xy. What is the value of x minus y? Since in the equation on top we already have y solved for, we're going to plug in what y is equal to in for y in the other equation. If we plug that in, we're going to get 4 times, instead of y, we're going to plug in what y is equal to, 4x plus 1, and that's going to equal 15x minus 8. We distribute the 4, and we'll get 16x plus 4 equals 15x minus 8. We can subtract 15x on both sides to get x plus 4 equals negative 8. And if we subtract 4 on both sides, we will get x equals negative 12. At this point, we're going to plug in what x is equal to in for x in the other equation. That will be y equals 4 times negative 12 plus 1. 4 times negative 12 is negative 48, plus 1 is negative 47. So x minus 12 would be negative 12 minus negative 47. Negative and negative make a positive, which will give us negative 12 plus 47, which ends up as 35. (22) How many distinct real solutions does the given equation have? In order to find the number of real solutions, we have to use the discriminant, which is b squared minus 4 times a times c. If the value that we get here is positive, that means that there's exactly two solutions. If the value is 0, that means there's one solution. And if the value is negative, that means there's no solution. 5 is our A, 10 is B, 16 is C. So we will have the discriminant equals 10 squared minus 4 times 5 times 16. 10 squared is 100. 5 times 4 is 20. And 20 times 16 is 320. 100 minus 320 is negative 220. And since the value of the discriminant is negative, that means that there's no solutions. So the number of solutions would be 0. (23) A certain park has an area of 11,863,808 square yards. What is the area in square miles of this park? So we know that 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. However, the question notes square yards and asks for our answer in square miles. So what we have to do to this 1 mile equals 1,760 yards is square both sides. We know 1 mile squared would be 1 miles squared. And for 1,760 squared, we get 3,097,600 yards squared. Then what we have to do is divide the area that we have, which is 11,863,808, by the conversion from yards squared to miles squared. 3,097,600. And when you divide these two numbers, we get 3.83, which is B. Number 24. Which of the following equations represents a circle in the xy plane that intersects the y-axis at exactly one point? The objective we need to find here is the number next to the x to be less than the radius, or equal to the radius, not more than the radius. What happens if we have an xy plane where the x is greater than the radius is our circle would intersect the y-axis at 2 points. We get this number from that x displacement, the displacement from our center to the edge of the circle in terms of the x value. So we're looking for the number next to our x to be less than or equal to the radius. Here for A, we have 8. That means that we're going to move our center to the right 8, and we have a radius of 4. Remember that for the equation of a circle, we have the radius squared on the right side of the equal sign. So if we have equal 16, that means that the radius is equal to 4. And since this is x minus 8 and the radius is 4, that means that this circle would not touch the y-axis at all. Same goes with B. C is 4 and the radius is 4. So C works out. The displacement for x is less than or equal to the radius. In this case, it's equal to. And then for the last one, this is x minus 0, and the radius is 4. That means that it's going to touch it more than one time. Number 25. In triangles ABC and DEF, angles B and E each have measure 27 degrees, and angles C and F each have measure 41 degrees. Which additional piece of information is sufficient to determine whether triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF? So the key word here is congruent. There's rules for two triangles to be congruent, and there's rules for two triangles to be similar. In order for it to be congruent, we not only need to know the angles, but we also need to have at least the measure of one side. So the measure of angle A won't help. We can already figure that out. The length of A to B, which doesn't matter. We want to know that it's the same as D to E. The measure of the length of sides BC and EF. BC and EF do correspond with each other, and that is going to be the answer. (26) Two data sets of 23 integers, each are summarized in the histograms shown. For each of the histograms, the first interval represents the frequency of integers greater than or equal to 10 but less than 20. The second interval represents the frequency of integers greater than or equal to 20 but less than 30, and so on. What is the smallest possible difference between the mean of dataset A and the mean of dataset B? So as you can see, between the two data sets of numbers, the actual numbers given are shifted to one side by 10. For dataset A, the integers are between 20 and 60, but for dataset B, they're between 10 and 50. So if we get a worst case scenario for dataset A and a worst case and a best case scenario for dataset B, there's going to be a 1-digit off for each interval. For example, for dataset A, the smallest that we can go is 19 for this first interval. But for dataset B, the best we can get is 19. The frequency of each number between the brackets is exactly the same. First it's 3, then it's 4, then it's 7, then it's 9. So if we have one number less for each of the numbers, there will be a total difference of 23 between the total numbers put together, and we're going to divide that by the total number of integers there is. And we would get 23 divided by 23, which gives us 1. (27) A right triangle has legs with length of 24 centimeters and 21 centimeters. If the length of this triangle's hypotenuse in centimeters can be written in the form 3 square root of d, where d is an integer, what is the value of d? So the first thing we need to do is create the triangle. One leg is 24, one leg is 21, and the hypotenuse we will call C. If we set up the Pythagorean theorem, we'll get 24 squared plus 21 squared equals C squared. 24 squared is 576. 21 squared is 441, and that's going to equal c squared. 441 plus 576 is 1017, which equals c squared, and then we need to take the square root of both sides. Since the answer that we're looking for is 3 square root of d, before we get to this point, before the 3 comes out of the square root, we would need to have square root of 9 times d. So in order to figure out what d is, we're going to have to set 9d equal to 1017. And to get d, we're going to divide both sides by 9, which gives us d equals 1017 divided by 9 is 113. So d is 113. Hello. Hello. Now we are going to be starting a new test. This is number 55 in this video, but it's the number 1 for this section. What is 10% of 470? 10% of means that we're going to turn the 10% into a decimal. 0.10 of means to multiply 470. 0.1 times 470 gives us 47, which is B. Number 2, 4x plus 6 equals 18. What equation has the same solution as the given equation? If you look at the answer choices, all of the answers have 4x equals. So the objective is not to get x by itself, but to get 4x by itself. We do that by subtracting 6 on both sides. If we subtract 6 on both sides, we will get 4x equals 18 minus 6 is 12. And that is C. Number 3, the total cost in dollars to rent a surfboard consists of a $25 service fee and a $10 per hour rental fee. A person rents a surfboard for T hours and intends to spend a maximum of $75 to rent the surfboard. Which inequality represents this situation? Whenever we're trying to write an equation or inequality, the one-time service fee has no variable next to it. The $25 is only paid one time, so we will have 25 plus $10 per hour. So it's going to be plus $10 times the number of hours that the person decides to rent the surfboard for. And they want to spend a maximum of $75. That means that whatever they spend by using this equation must be less than or equal to 75, which if we look at the answer choices, that is D. Number 4, the function g is defined by g of x equals x squared plus 9, for which value of x is g of x equal to 25. Since we have g of x is equal to x squared plus 9, we're going to write that x squared plus 9 equals g of x. And we know that g of x is also equal to 25. We can eliminate g of x in the middle, and we will have x squared plus 9 equals 25. The question is asking for what value of x is this statement true, so we want to try to get x by itself. The first step is to subtract 9 on both sides. This will give us x squared equals 16. And then to get x by itself, we're going to take the square root of both sides, and that will give us x equals plus or minus 4. And if we look at our answer choices, you will find 4. Number 5. Each face of a fair 14-sided die is labeled with the numbers from 1 through 14, with a different number appearing on each face. If the die is rolled one time, what is the probability of rolling a 2? Whenever we're trying to find the probability of an outcome, we divide what we're looking for and we divide that by the total number of outcomes. The number of possibilities of rolling a 2, there's only one outcome in which we get a 2. That's if we roll a 2. And since the die has 14 different sides numbered 1 through 14, there's 14 possible outcomes. So the answer will be 1 over 14. 6. A printer produces posters at a constant rate of 42 posters per minute. At what rate in posters per hour does the printer produce the posters? So we know that the printer produces 42 posters per minute. And in order to figure out how many it prints per hour, all we have to do is multiply this by 60 minutes. 42 times 60 gives us 2,520 posters per hour. Number 7. The function f is defined by the equation f of x equals 7x plus 2. What is the value of f of x when x equals 4? What we want to do here is plug in the value for x that they give us, 4, into the equation that they provided above. This will be f of 4 is equal to 7, and then instead of x, we're going to plug in what x is equal to. 4 plus 2. 7 times 4 is 28, and 28 plus 2 is 30. Number 8. A teacher is creating an assignment worth 70 points. The assignment will consist of questions worth 1 point and questions worth 3 points. Which equation represents this situation where x represents the number of 1-point questions and y represents the number of 3-point questions? What we want to do to set up this equation is first write out 1 times x. 1 is the number of points you get times the number of 1-point questions, plus 3 points per question times the number of 3-point questions, and that's going to equal the total number of points that are on the assignment. And if we look at the answer choices, you will see this is D. Number 9. Right triangles LMN and PQR are similar, where L corresponds to M and where L and M correspond to P and Q, respectively. Angle M has a measure of 53 degrees. What is the measure of angle Q? We know that angle M and angle Q correspond to each other. Since these two right triangles are similar, that means that the corresponding angles will also be the same. So since the angle measure of M is equal to the angle measure of Q, we know that angle Q has to be 53 degrees. Number 10. The solution to the given system of equations is x comma y. What is the value of x? What we need to do is substitute what we have for y, which is negative 3x, in for y in the other equation. If we do that, we will have 4x minus 3x equals 15. Since y is equal to negative 3x, we plug that in for y in the other equation. 4x minus 3x is x, and that is equal to 15. So what is the value of x? X equals 15. Number 11. Which of the following equations is the most appropriate linear model for the data shown in the scatter plot? There's two things to consider here. One is the slope, and the other is the y-intercept. We want to see what the sign of each of these values should be. For the slope, from left to right, the line of best fit, which is this line that I'm drawing now, more or less, is decreasing. The y value is going down as the x value is going up. So that means that our slope has to be a negative number. The y-intercept, where we cross the y-axis, is somewhere up here between 9 and 10, or a little bit above 10. So that means that our y-intercept has to be positive. So with a negative slope and a positive y-intercept, we will be able to figure out what our answer is. It should be y equals some negative number times x plus a positive number. And if you look at the answer choices, B is the only one that fits that. Number 12. The graph of y equals f of x is shown where the function f is defined by f of x equals a times x cubed plus b times x squared plus c times x plus d, and a, b, c, and d are constants. How many values of x does f of x equal 0? When they say f of x equals 0, that's the same thing as saying y equals 0. And whenever we have one variable equal to 0, that means we're looking for the intercepts of the other variable. So since y is equal to 0, that means that we're looking for our x-intercepts. And the question is asking how many values of x, which means how many x-intercepts are there. So if we count 1, 2, 3, there are 3 x-intercepts. Number 13. Vivian bought party hats and cupcakes for $71. Each package of party hats costs $3 and each cupcake costs $1. If Vivian bought 10 packages of party hats, how many cupcakes did she buy? So we know that she bought party hats and cupcakes for $71 in total. We know that each package of party hats costs $3 times the number of party hats that she bought plus $1 times the number of cupcakes that she bought is going to equal $71 in total. They're saying that if she bought 10 packages of party hats, how many cupcakes did she buy? So they're saying if x equals 10, what is the value of y? So if we plug in 10 for x, we're going to get 3 times 10 plus 1 times y equals 71. 3 times 10 is 30 plus y equals 71. And to get y by itself, we're going to subtract 30 on each side. This gives us y equals 41. So if she bought 10 packages of party hats, that means she bought 41 cupcakes. Number 14. What is one of the solutions to the given equation? We have z squared plus 10z minus 24 equals 0. We're going to split this up into two sets of parentheses so that we can factor the quadratic equation. Since we have z squared as our first term, we are going to write z as the first term for both sets of parentheses. The first sign is a plus, so we're going to write that here. And the question we have to ask ourselves is a positive times what gives us a negative? And the answer is a positive times a negative gives us a negative. Now we have to find factors of 24 that subtract to make 10. So factors of 24 that subtract to make 10 is going to be 12 and 2. The bigger number always goes first. And we end up with z plus 12 times z minus 2 equals 10. What we have to do is set each of them equal to 0 and solve for z. For the first one, we're going to subtract 12 on both sides, and we get z equals negative 12. For the second one, we have to add 2 to both sides to get z equals 2. So either one of these answers would be correct, either negative 12 or 2. Bacteria are growing in a liquid growth medium. There are 300,000 cells per milliliter during an initial observation. The number of cells per milliliter doubles every 3 hours. How many cells per milliliter will there be 15 hours after the initial observation? So we know that we're starting off with 300,000. And every 3 hours, this amount doubles. So we're going to keep on doubling it until we get to 15 hours. So at the 3-hour mark, we would have doubled one time, which would be 600,000. At the 6-hour mark, we would have doubled again. That would be 1.2 million. At the 9-hour mark, we would have doubled again. That'll be 2.4 million. At the 12-hour mark, we would have doubled again, 4.8 million. And then 3 hours later, at the 15-hour mark, we would have doubled one last time to give us 9.6 million. Which expression is equivalent to 6 times x to the power of 8 times y to the power of 2 plus 12 times x to the power of 2 times y to the power of 2? If we look at our answer choices, it looks like we have to factor out the like terms between these two terms. They both have a 6 in common. And whenever both terms have the same variable, you want to factor out the variable with the smaller exponent. So we have x to the power of 8 and x to the power of 2. We're going to factor out x to the power of 2. And then we have y to the power of 2 and y to the power of 2. So that's the same for both. We're going to factor out y to the power of 2. If we factor out 6x squared y squared from the first term, the 6 is eliminated, the y is eliminated, and we take away 2 out of the 8 x's. which will leave us with x to the power of 6. Then plus, if we take away a 6, the 12 is going to become a 2. X squared we factored out, y squared we factored out. And we end up with x to the power of 6 plus 2 inside of the parentheses, which is C. A neighborhood consists of a 2-hectare park and a 35-hectare residential area. The total number of trees in the neighborhood is 3,934. The equation 2x plus 35y equals 3,934 represents this situation. Which of the following is the best interpretation of x in this context? We know that when we add these two equations together, this represents the total number of trees. So since we have 2 in front of x and 35 in front of y, these values must represent the average number of trees within each of these areas. The x must be the average number of trees per hectare in the park. Y must be the average number of trees per hectare in the residential area. So if we read the answer choices, A says the average number of trees per hectare in the park, which is what X represents. The average number of trees per hectare in the residential area, that would be represented by Y. The total number of trees in the park, that's the 3,934. And the total number of trees in the residential area, that's the 35 times y. So the answer is A. Number 18. The graph shows the relationship between the number of shares of stock from company A, X, and the number of shares of stock from company B, Y, that Simone can purchase. Which equation could represent this relationship? The first thing to look at is our y-intercept, which is 40. We know that if the linear equation is of the form y equals mx plus b, that our b has to be 40. So right away we can eliminate A and C, because for A the y-intercept is 12, for C the y-intercept is 8. The next step is to turn B and D into y equals mx plus b. If we do that for b, we will get, first we have to subtract 8 on both sides. That will give us 12y equals negative 8x plus 480. And if we divide everything by 12, we will get y equals negative 2 over 3x plus 40. This matches our y-intercept that we got. Let's check D. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to get y by itself. First, we're going to subtract 12x to both sides. 8y equals negative 12x plus 480. And then we're going to divide everything by 8. This will give us y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 60. 60 does not match the y-intercept that we have above, so the answer is B. Number 19. Circle A has a radius of 3n and circle B has a radius of 129n, where n is a positive constant. The area of circle B is how many times the area of circle A. So to figure out how many times bigger is circle B than circle A, we're going to have to divide the area of circle B by the area of circle A. First, we're going to find the area of circle A. That is pi r squared. We know that the radius is 3n, so it's going to be pi times 3n squared, which gives us 9n squared times pi. We're going to do the same for the area of circle B. It's going to be pi times 129n squared. The area of circle B is 129 times 129. It's 16,641 n squared times pi. Now we're going to divide both of these by each other. 16,641 n squared times pi divided by 9n squared times pi. The pi's cancel, the n squares cancel, and then all we're left to do is divide 16,641 by 9, and that gives us 1,849, or D. Number 20. The frequency table summarizes the 57 data values in the dataset. What is the maximum data value in the dataset? So they're looking for the data value that is the highest, which will be 14. When they ask for the maximum data value in the dataset, you have to look at the column of data values, and you have to look for the highest number, which ends up being 14. 21. A circle in the xy plane has a diameter with endpoints 2, 4 and 2, 14. An equation of this circle is x minus 2 squared plus y minus 9 squared equals r squared, where r is a positive constant. What is the value of r? If we have a circle and these two are our endpoints creating a diameter, you can see that the 2 is the value for x for both of them. So we can subtract the y values to get the distance between the 2 points. 14 minus 4 is 10, which means the diameter is 10 units. In the equation, they don't ask for diameter, they ask for radius. In order to get the radius, we're going to divide the diameter by 2. And so 10 divided by 2 is 5. What is the value of r? The value of r is 5. 22. The measure of angle r is 2 pi over 3 radians. The measure of angle t is 5 pi over 12 radians, greater than the measure of angle r. What is the measure of angle t in degrees? The first thing we have to do is figure out what the measure of angle t is. They tell us that the measure of angle t is going to be the measure of angle r plus 5 pi over 12. The measure of angle r is 2 pi over 3, and we're going to add that to 5 pi over 12. Whenever we're adding fractions, we need the same denominator. We need to turn the 3 into a 12 and add that to 5 pi over 12. The way that we turn the 3 into a 12 is by multiplying by 4, and what we do to the bottom, we also do to the top. So 2 pi over 3 becomes 8 pi over 12. And so when we add them together, we add 8 pi plus 5 pi, which gives us 13 pi over 12. The last step is that they're looking for the measure of angle t in degrees. When we have 13 pi over 12, the way that we turn this measure from radians to degrees is by multiplying by 180 over pi. The pi on top and the pi on the bottom cancel, and we can simplify 180 and 12. 180 divided by 12 gives us 15. And this will be 13 times 15, which gives us 195. So the answer is 195 degrees. You can also see that 13 pi over 12 is a little bit greater than just pi, which we know is 180 degrees. So you can look for which answer is a little bit above 180, which will be C. Number 23. A certain town has an area of 4.36 square miles. What is the area in square yards of this town? 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. Since the question is talking about square miles and square yards, we're going to use this conversion to find out what the conversion rate is from square miles to square yards. The way that we do that is we start off with the conversion that they give us. 1 mile equals 1,760 yards, and then we're going to square both sides. 1 mile squared is 1 mile squared, and then 1,760 squared gives us 3,097,600 yards squared. In order to turn the 1 mile into 4.36 square miles, we're going to multiply by 4.36 to give us 4.36 miles squared, and we're going to do the same thing to the 3,097,600. So this value times 4.63 gives us 13,505,536 yards squared, which is D. (24) For line H, the table shows 3 values of x and their corresponding values of y. Line K is the result of translating line H down 5 units in the xy plane. What is the x-intercept of line K? If we bring line H down 5 units, that means that each of the y values is going to decrease by 5. So we will have a new table. This will be for line K. This one is for line H. It will be 18 and 125, 23 and 155, 26 and 173. We're going to find the slope between two of these points. We will use the first two. Remember that the equation for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If we plug in the values, we're going to have 155 minus 125 over 23 minus 18. 155 minus 125 is 30. And 23 minus 18 is 5. 30 divided by 5 is 6. So we have y equals mx plus b, where our m is 6. Y equals 6x plus b. We can use one of the ordered pairs to figure out what b is. We will use the first one. 125 equals 6 times 18 plus b. 6 times 18 is 108 plus b. To get b by itself, we will subtract 108 on both sides. 125 minus 108 is 17. So we get that b equals 17. So our equation is now y equals 6x plus 17. The question is asking for the x-intercept of line K. Right now we just have the equation of line K. The way that we find the x-intercept is we set y equal to 0. So instead of y, we're going to plug in 0 equals 6x plus 17. And the objective is to get x by itself. First, we're going to subtract 17 on each side to give us 6x equals negative 17. And then we can divide both sides by 6 to get negative 17 over 6. Or D. Number 25. In the xy plane, the graph of the equation y equals negative x squared plus 9x minus 100 intersects the line y equals c at exactly one point. What is the value of c? What we need to do here is find the y-intercept, or the y portion of the vertex. In order to find the vertex, first we need to find the x value, which is negative b over 2 times a, where a is the number in front of x squared, negative 1, b is the number in front of x, which is 9, and c is the number by itself, negative 100. Negative b over 2a is going to be negative 9 over 2 times negative 1, which is 9 over 2. That's the x value of our vertex. Negative b over 2a, which is going to equal negative 9 over 2 times negative 1, which gives us 9 over 2. So the x value of the vertex is 9 over 2. The question is, what is the x value of our vertex? What we need to do is plug this back in to the original equation to figure out what it would be. Y equals negative 9 over 2 squared plus 9 times 9 over 2 minus 100. 9 over 2 squared gives us 81 over 4, and we still have the negative sign in front, plus 9 times 9 over 2 is what's going on? Is 81 over 2. Nine over 2 squared is 81 over 4, and we have the negative sign in front, plus 9 times 9 is 81, and then over 2 minus 100. Negative 81 over 4 plus 81 over 2 gives us 81 over 4 minus 100. In order to add these two together, this is 100 over 1. We have to change the denominator of 100 over 1. This will give us 81 over 4 minus 400 over 4. 81 minus 400 gives us negative 319 over 4, which is C. Number 26. For each real number r, which of the following points lies on the graph of each equation in the xy plane for the given system? We have 2x plus 3y equals 7 and 10x plus 15y equals 35. What we need to do is figure out what xy combination makes this statement true. If we plug in 2 for y, that will give us 6. That will give us 6. And in order to get to 7, 2x would have to be 1. So that xy combination, 2 times what number is 1? 2 times half is 1. And to get from 3y to 6, y would have to be 2. So this is a combination of half for x, 2 for y. We're going to plug in these values where r is either our x coordinate or our y coordinate. We're going to start off with b. For b, the r is the y coordinate, which is 2. So we're going to plug in 2 for r to see if we get half. Negative 3 over 2 times 2 plus 7 over 2. Negative 3 over 2 times 2 is negative 3 plus 7 over 2. In order to combine these two fractions, we have to turn negative 3 over 1 into negative 6 over 2 plus 7 over 2, and that gives us half. So for a y value of 2, we ended up getting an x value of half, which is exactly what we're looking for. So the answer is B. If you try this with any other of the answer choices, you will see that it will not match to be half, comma, 2. Number 27. The perimeter of an equilateral triangle is 624 centimeters. The height of the triangle is k square root of 3 centimeters, where k is a constant. What is the value of k? First, we know that in an equilateral triangle, all the sides have the same length. So if the perimeter is 624, that means that each side must have a length of 208. In order to figure out the height, we have to split it down the middle, and we're going to rewrite this triangle that I'm outlining in red. The height is what we're looking for. The base is cut in half, so this will be 104, and the hypotenuse is still 208. I'm going to redraw an example of this type of triangle, which is a 60, 30, 90 triangle. The value opposite to the 30-degree mark, which is the smallest side, will be represented by x. The angle opposite to the 90 degrees will be 2x, and the side opposite to 60 degrees will be x times the square root of 3. If we look at the red triangle, this is our 90 degrees, this is 60 degrees, and this is our 30 degrees. We know that the question mark has to be some value x times the square root of 3, like the question explains. So to figure out what x is, or as the question stated, k, all we have to do is look at the value opposite to 30 degrees, which is 104. So 104 is the answer. Tilly earns P dollars for every W hours of work. Which expression represents the amount of money in dollars Tilly earns for 39 W hours of work? Since they earn P dollars for every W hours, we can say that P equals W. So when they ask for how much Tilly will earn for 39 W hours of work, that will simply be 39 P dollars. For a training program, Juan rides his bike at an average rate of 5.7 minutes per mile. Which function M models the number of minutes it will take Juan to ride M miles at this rate? So before we go over the answer, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say we're traveling 50 miles per hour and we want to travel a total of 100 miles. The objective here is to see how long would it take to travel 100 miles going 50 miles per hour. You know that it would take a total of 2 hours, but the way that we set up these two numbers to figure that out is we write the number of miles and divide that by our rate, or in this case the miles per hour, which gives us 2 hours. So the goal or the objective is to divide the number of miles, which in this case is X miles, by the rate that we were given, which is 5.7 minutes per mile. Number 3. The solution to the given system of equations is x, y. What is the value of y? First, we're going to get x by itself in the equation above. 3x equals 12. To get x by itself, we divide each side by 3, and that gives us x equals 4. Next, we're going to plug in 4 for x in the other equation to get negative 3 times 4 plus y equals negative 6. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12 plus y equals negative 6. The last step to get y by itself is to add 12 to both sides. And finally, we will get y equals 6. The equation gives the speed s in miles per hour of a certain car t seconds after it began to accelerate. What is the speed in miles per hour of the car 5 seconds after it began to accelerate? What they're asking for here is what is the value of s when t equals 5. So all we need to do is plug in 5 for t, and that's going to give us our answer. S equals 40 plus 3 times 5. 3 times 5 is 15. And 40 plus 15 is 55. So the car will be going 55 miles per hour after 5 seconds. Number 5. For the right triangle shown, A equals 4 and B equals 5. Which expression represents the value of C? In order to find C, which is the hypotenuse, we have to use the Pythagorean theorem. That will be A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We know A is 4, B is 5, and we're looking for C. If we were normally figuring out what the answer is, we would square each of these values and then add them together. But we're going to get C by itself by taking the square root. And we get that C is equal to the square root of 4 squared plus 5 squared, which is D. Number 6. What is the solution to the given equation? The objective here is to figure out what x is equal to. The first step is to subtract 5 on both sides. This will give us 4x equals 160. And then to get x by itself, we're going to divide each side by 4. This will give us x equals 40. The x-intercept of the graph shown is x, 0. What is the value of x? The x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis. We can see that our graph crosses the x-axis right here, and that's in between 6 and 8, which would mean that x is equal to 7. The function f is defined by f of x equals 1 over 10 times x minus 2. What is the y-intercept of the graph of y equals f of x in the xy plane? We know that when we have a linear equation, it comes in the form y equals mx plus b, where b is our y-intercept. So if we look at the equation f of x equals 1 over 10x minus 2, we can see that negative 2 is in the same place as b. So our y-intercept is negative 2. Whenever we have one of the intercepts, in this case we have the y-intercept, that means that the other variable is equal to 0. So if we have an ordered pair of x and y, we know that x is 0 and y is negative 2. The function f is defined by f of x equals 7 times x to the power of 3. In the xy plane, the graph of y equals g of x is the result of shifting the graph of y equals f of x down 2 units. Which equation defines function g? If we're bringing an equation down 2 units, that means that we're going to have to subtract 2 from whatever our function is. Right now, we have f of x equals 7x cubed. So if we were to apply this transformation of down 2, our new equation would be 7x to the third minus 2. All we have to do is subtract 2 at the end. Which ordered pair, x, y, is a solution to the given system of equations? The first step is to get x by itself in the equation on top. We have x plus 7 equals 10. To get x by itself, we're going to subtract 7 on each side, and that's going to give us x equals 3. Next, we're going to plug in 3 in for x in the other equation. The other equation is x plus 7, all of that squared equals y. Instead of x, we're going to plug in 3. That's going to be 3 plus 7 squared equals y. 3 plus 7 is 10, and 10 squared is 100. So we have that y equals 100 and x equals 3. If we plug this in to an xy ordered pair, we're going to get 3, 100. Which expression is equivalent to 7x to the third plus 7x minus 6x to the third minus 3x? The first step is to distribute the negative sign in the middle. And once we do this, we don't have to write any more parentheses. So once we distribute the negative, we're going to have 7x to the third plus 7x. Then 6x to the third times negative 1 is negative 6x to the third. And then negative 3x times negative 1 is going to be plus 3x. Next, we're going to combine like terms. 7x to the third and negative 6x to the third go together. And then 7x and 3x go together. 7x to the third minus 6x to the third is x to the third. There's an imaginary 1 in front. And then 7x plus 3x is going to be plus 10x. And that gives us x to the third plus 10x. Number 12. The function p is defined by p of n equals 7 times n to the power of 3. What is the value of n when p of n is equal to 56? So we know that p of n equals 56, but we also know that p of n is equal to 7 times n to the third. When we have this equation set up, we can remove p of n in the middle to get 7 times n to the third equals 56. The objective here is to figure out what n equals. The first step is to divide by 7 on both sides. This gives us n to the third equals 8. And to get rid of the third power, we have to take the cubed root of each side. On the left side, we're going to get n. And on the right side, the cubed root of 8 is 2. So we get that n is equal to 2. In the figure shown, line C intersects parallel lines S and T. What is the value of x? Remember that when we have two parallel lines and one line intersecting them, there's 8 different angles that appear, but each of these angles share values. So in total, there's only 2 different angle measures that we're going to get from these 8 different angles. The angles that I'm outlining in red are all equal, and the angles that I'm outlining in blue are all equal. Since we know that all the red ones are the same, we know that this red angle is going to be 110 degrees. And if we focus on this straight line, I'll draw it here. We know on the left side we have 110, and on the right side we have x. When we add 110 and x together, the total degrees of a straight line will be 180. To get x by itself, we're going to subtract 110 on each side, and this will give us x equals 70. A list of 10 data values is shown. 6, 8, 16, 4, 17, 26, 8, 5, 5, and 5. What is the mean of these data? The way that we find the mean of a set of data is we add all the numbers together and then we divide by the total amount of values that we have in the set. So what we need to do is add 6 plus 8 plus 16 plus 4 plus 17 plus 26 plus 8 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, and we're going to divide all of this by 10. 6 plus 8 plus 16 plus 4 plus 17 plus 26 plus 8 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, all of that added together is 100. And we're going to divide this by 10, which gives us a mean of 10. The equation E of t equals 5 times 1.8 to the power of t gives the estimated number of employees at a restaurant, where t is the number of years since the restaurant opened. Which of the following is the best interpretation of the number 5 in this context? Whenever we have an equation of the form p times 1 plus or minus our rate to the power of t, p, p is usually the principal or the initial amount. So 5 should represent the number of employees that the restaurant had the year that it opened. A says the estimated number of employees when the restaurant opened. That seems to be right. B is the increase in the number of employees each year. That's not right. The number of years the restaurant has been opened. That would be T. So it can't be C. The percent increase in the estimated number of employees each year. That's not it either. That would be R. So the answer is A. 16. What is the minimum value of the given function? So we're going to rewrite the equation so that we have a b. So we have x squared. There's no x in between x squared and 55. So we're going to write 0x plus 55. The way that we find the minimum value is we need to find the vertex, and they're looking for the y value. That's going to give us the minimum value. The way that we find the x of the vertex is negative b over 2 times a. A is the number in front of x squared, 1. B is the number in front of x, 0. And C is the number with no x next to it, or the constant at the end. If we plug in these values into negative b over 2a, that's going to give us negative 0 over 2 times 1, which is just 0. So the x value of our vertex is 0. And if we plug this back into the original equation, we're going to have g of 0 equals 0 squared plus 55. 0 squared is 0, and 0 plus 55 is just 55. And this is going to be our minimum value. Each year, the value of an investment increases by 0.49%. Of its value the previous year, which of the following functions best models how the value of the investment changes over time? Whenever you have an increase or decrease based off of a percentage, this is always going to be exponential. And since the question states that the investment increases by the given percentage, this is going to be an increasing exponential equation. The population of Greenville increased by 7% from 2015 to 2016. If the 2016 population is K times the 2015 population, what is the value of K? The way that they word this is whatever the number was in 2015, we'll call it X, is going to be K times more than what it was in 2016. So 2015 times the percent change equals the value in 2016. We know that it increased by 7%. And when we have a 7% increase, that's going to be 100% plus the percent of the increase. In this case, it's 7%. And that's going to equal the population in 2016. So this will give us X times 107% will equal Y. And if we turned 107% into a decimal, we'll get 1.07 times the population size in 2015 is going to equal the population size in 2016. So it is 1.07 times greater. Number 19. Which expression is equivalent to a to the power of 11 over 12, where a is greater than 0? Whenever we have a fraction as our exponent, the numerator of the fraction becomes the exponent of our variable, and the denominator of the fraction becomes the root or the radical. So we should be looking for the 12th root of a to the power of 11. If you look at the answer choices, this is not one of the possibilities. If we look at answer choice A, we have 12 in the radical, but inside, as the exponent of our variable, we have 132. Can't be that one. For B, we have 144 on the outside and 132 on the inside. If we multiply the top and the bottom of our fraction by 12, we will get 132 over 144. And this will give us a to the power of 132 with 144 on the outside. And this gives us our answer. For C, they're backwards. They multiply top and bottom by 11, but they wrote the 11 on the outside and 12 on the inside, so it can't be C. And then D, they have 11 on the outside, which we know is wrong. An event planner is planning a party. It costs the event planner a one-time fee of $35 to rent the venue and $10.25 per attendee. The event planner has a budget of $200. What is the greatest number of attendees possible without exceeding the budget? If we were to write an equation here, the one-time fee is $35 plus $10.25 times the number of people that are attending, and we're going to set this equal to 200. First, we're going to subtract 35 on each side. This will give us 1025 times x equals 165. To get x by itself, we're going to divide by 1025. And this will give us x equals, and then 165 divided by 1025 gives us 16.1. Since we can't have 0.1 of a person, we have to round down, which tells us that the greatest number of attendees possible is 16 people. If the absolute value of 4x minus 4 equals 112, what is the positive value of x minus 1? Whenever we have an absolute value equation, we split it up into two separate equations. One will be 4x minus 4 equals 112, and then the other one will be exactly the same, but the value on the other side of the equal sign will be multiplied by negative 1. So on the other side, we'll have 4x minus 4 equals negative 112. The positive value is the value on the left, so we don't have to continue with the value on the right. And the way that we turn 4x minus 4 into x minus 1 is by dividing each side by 4. If we divide 4x minus 4 by 4, that gives us x minus 1. And then 112 divided by 4 is 28. So we get that the positive value of x minus 1 is 28. A cube has edge length of 68 inches. A solid sphere with a radius of 34 inches is inside the cube, such that the sphere touches the center of each face of the cube. To the nearest cubic inch, what is the volume of the space in the cube that is not taken up by the sphere? What we have to do to answer this question is first find the volume of the cube and then subtract that by the volume of the sphere. The volume of the cube is length times width times height. We know that since it's a cube, all these values will be the same, and they're all 68. So the volume of the cube will be 68 times 68 times 68. And if we multiply 68 times itself 3 times, we will get 314,432 cubic inches. Next, we need to find the volume of the sphere. Volume of a sphere is 4 over 3 times pi times the radius cubed. If we plug in the radius, this will be 4 over 3, pi is 3.14, and then the radius is 34, and we're going to cube this. If we multiply all these values together, 34 cubed times 4 divided by 3 times pi gives us 164,552. And finally, we need to subtract these two values from each other. 314,432 minus 164,552 is going to equal 149,796, which is A. What is the diameter of the circle in the xy plane with equation x minus 5 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 16? The standard equation for a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So we find that r squared equals 16, which means that r is equal to 4. Now the question is not asking for radius, it's asking for the diameter. And we know that the radius times 2 equals the diameter. So we get that the diameter is 8. For the exponential function f, the value of f of 1 is k, where k is a constant. Which of the following equivalent forms of the function f shows the value of k as the coefficient or the base? The base is the number in front of the parenthesis. So they're asking, when we plug in 1 for x, what gives us the value that's right in front? What we'll be looking for is when we plug in 1 for x, we end up with 1.6 to the power of 0. If we plug it into the first one, we'll get 1.6 to the power of x plus 1. That'll be to the power of 2. So it's not A. For B, it would be 1.6 to the power. We'll plug in 1 for x, 1. Can't be B. For C, we'll plug in 1.6 to the power of x minus 1, which is 1 minus 1, which is 0. And this is what we're looking for. 1.6 to the power of 0 is just 1. And when we plug in 1 for x, we end up with the number in front. A model estimates that at the end of each year from 2015 to 2020, the number of squirrels in a population was 150% more than the number of squirrels in the population at the end of the previous year. The model estimates that at the end of 2016, there were 180 squirrels in the population. Which of the following equations represents this model, where n is the estimated number of squirrels in the population t years after the end of 2015, and t is less than or equal to 5. So the first thing to consider when we have an exponential growth or decay question is the value is going to be equal to the principal times 100% plus or minus the rate, depending on whether it's an increase or a decrease, to the power of t. In this case, the population is 150% more than, so that means it's increasing by 150%. Inside the parenthesis, we should have 100% plus the increase, which is 150%. So inside the parentheses, we should have 250%, which comes out to 2.5 to the power of t. So we know it can't be A, can't be B. It's either going to be B or C. The number in front represents the population of the squirrels at the end of 2015. If you look at D, we have 180, but in the question it says the model estimates at the end of 2016 there were 180 squirrels in the population. So this number represents the number of squirrels at the end of 2016 and not at the end of 2015. So the answer has to be B. In the given pair of equations, A and B are constants. The graph of this pair of equations in the xy plane is a pair of perpendicular lines. Which of the following pairs of equations also represents a pair of perpendicular lines? In order for these two lines to be perpendicular, we would need to have the opposite values of the coefficients of x and y in the equation on top, and one of the signs would have to be different. For example, A could be equal to -7 and B would be equal to 5. They have to be opposite in that sense. So if we look at A, we have 10x plus 7y, and if we were to plug in these values, we would have -7a minus 10y equals 1 as the second equation. These two are opposite in terms of their placement, but they all share the same signs. These two are negative, these two are positive. But in order for them to be considered perpendicular, they have to have one sign that's different. So now we'll move on to B. If we plug in these values in for B, for the second equation in B, we'll have -7x plus 10y equals 1. So as you can see, they're in the opposite spots, 10 and 7. And then for the equation in the bottom, they have different signs. So this gives us perpendicular lines if we were to find the slope of these two equations. The answer will end up being B. For number 27, we have in the given equation, C is a constant. The equation has no real solutions if C is greater than n. What is the least possible value of n? In order for a quadratic equation to have no real solutions, the discriminant has to be less than 0. The discriminant is b squared minus 4 times a times c. If we plug in these values, we'll get -34 squared minus 4 times 1 times c. And this has to be less than 0. 34 squared is 1156 minus 4 times c is less than 0. We're going to subtract 1156 on both sides, which will give us -4c is less than -1156. And finally, to get c by itself, we're going to divide each side by -4. Whenever we multiply or divide an inequality by a negative number, the sign flips. And then -1156 divided by -4 is 289, which is the least possible value for n. That is the end of this video. I hope you learned a few new things. If you haven't already, please make sure that you hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more SAT content like this one. And if you're looking for one-on-one tutoring to improve your ACT or SAT scores, check out the link in the description. I'll see you in the next one.